Do you feel sometimes like you have to do it all yourself? Like you're struggling to keep up with everything that needs to be done, but you're not quite making it? Sometimes it can really feel like you're slogging uphill. But does it actually need to be that hard? Today we're discussing universal life force, an unseen, infinite, massively powerful, and nurturing force that can help us feel energized and supported. We talk about what it is, and most importantly, how to access it. And after the discussion, we get to the most important part. The group frequency calibration associated with this episode is where the frequency work happens and where change actually occurs. So be sure to listen to that. Without releasing distortion patterns targeted by the GFC, the change you want will be more difficult to attain because you haven't addressed the root of the issue. If you like this episode, please hit the like button. And if you want to make sure you don't miss our regular new content, click the subscribe button too. My name is Karen Cheong, and today in Mastering Your Role Through Frequencies, we're discussing accessing universal life force.
Universal life force. Are we talking about Darth Vader? And the force is with you. I mean, what are we actually talking about here?
Yeah. So, a lot of people feel like they have to power through things on their own. They have to get everything done on their to-do list. And at the end of the day, they feel kind of exhausted because they've run through their own life force, their own bioenergy. The thing is, there's this massive amount of infinite life force at the universal level that we can tap into that can help to support and nourish us if we are present enough and surrendered enough to tap into it. And then when we're in that kind of flow, so a lot of people will call this being in flow also. That's another way of saying it.
Got it.
So if you're in flow, or if you're aligned with this universal life force, which is a way of saying in flow, or if you have studied the Tao Te Ching, like the Chinese Taoist scriptures, they call it Wu Wei, right? Like it's like action in non-action, being in flow. So it's that's what we're talking about today. It's like, how can you stay aligned with this greater force and be in flow without just thinking that you're separate, finite, and like chugging along with your own personal life force only?
All right. So how?
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I want to just mention is that, when we drop through the veil of forgetting, which you and I have talked about in the past, and just as a quick summary, when you decide to embody in your consciousness or your being that's not embodied, and you drop into becoming embodied, then you pass through what we call the veil of forgetting. And in that veil, that's when you forget that you're part of the oneness. So you believe that you're separate. You also forget that you're infinite indestructible consciousness. Okay, so you believe that you're separate, that you're finite, and this is like the everything that there is this physical body.
So basically, you're running around thinking, there's only you can do this, there's only you that can do this, nobody else is going to help you.
Yes.
So that's where you feel this exhaustion.
Exactly.
On all levels, mental, emotional, physical.
Exactly.
Right.
Because you're running on all cylinders.
Yeah.
Trying to keep up with life, deal with everything that you have to do, try to aspire to something else, but there's only like your little block of energy that you can use, this little like battery pack that you called your personal life force that you have to sustain you through all of it. And when you believe that you're separate from this universal life force, okay, or flow, or whatever you want to call it, then it really does feel exhausting because you're just you. So to answer your question, which was how do you become aware of that universal life force? This really has to do with being centered in the body, present in the present moment of linear time. So meaning present in the body. When you can come into this space where you're centered within yourself, without, the expectation, the story, etc. of the mind, and you can just be in that moment, you actually can drop into this universal life flow without really even trying. You just come into flow with all that is, because you're not like having all these thoughts, you're not up in your head, you're not thinking about all these things. You're now all of a sudden entering flow.
Just two questions there before I forget.
Yeah.
We're moving at quite a pace there. How do you get there, though? What do you do? What can you do to get into that? And then when you're in it, how does that look? How would I recognize it?
Yeah. So I'm going to start with the second question first.
Right.
And just nudge me if I forget the first one.
Yeah.
Because the how is pretty important to most people.
Yeah, I want to know how I get there. Give me it now.
Okay, so how you know that you're in flow is because things become very synchronicitous. Okay, so people come into your life in unexpected ways to help you, and you don't even realize that you exactly need help, or you're starting to think, oh, geez, how am I going to figure that out? And all of a sudden, boom, here comes the solution. For example.
Okay.
So you're supported in that way without really having to like struggle to look up how you're going to figure it out and what your next steps are, and then making a list and evaluating who's going to come help you and then calling them, etc. So all of a sudden this person comes into your life, either through like an email from someone else, or like, someone texts you and tells you about, hey, look at this amazing article about this person that I found, or whatever. So life becomes more synchronicitous in a way that's very supportive of you. Okay, that's how you know you're in flow. So you're not really thinking like, I need to achieve this. You may be starting to feel that way, but then these solutions that you never would have thought of, or these people or circumstances that come along to help you without you exactly planning it, show up.
So I'm imagining for this to happen, you have to be a certain way for it to happen.
Yes.
So is this the how?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So the how is, it's funny, the how is in every moment, okay, and also generally. So you're like, well, what does that mean? So I mean specifically and generally. So the more you can be in the present moment of linear time, so present, centered in the body.
Right, so give me how we do that.
Okay, so how you can do that is you become aware of the body. So meaning, for some of you, that would be like, I feel my feet against the earth. I feel the pads of my toes. I feel the space between my toes. I'm aware of my breath expanding and contracting within my lungs, and I can feel and I'm aware of how much my rib cage expands, like this kind of thing.
Yes.
Okay, so now all of a sudden you're very present in the body because you're really focused on it. Okay, and then in terms of being centered in the body, it's becoming present in that moment. So you can do a couple of things for this.
Yeah.
One is you can spatially orient. Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar with triangulation, so it means being aware of 3 objects in a space around you, and being aware of the distance between you and the object and feeling that distance.
Yeah.
Okay, so for example, I would be aware that the chair that you're sitting on is about, I don't know, what is this, like a foot to me? And I'd be aware of that. I'm like, okay. And then, for example, the table that you all can't see is this far away from me, or the closet door, or that type of thing. And now all of a sudden I start to become, because my focus is on the body, where am I in space? Now you're becoming more and more present in the body to what's happening right now. That is how you come present in the body. And when you do that, you come more into the 0 point, which we talked about in episode 151. So if you don't know what the 0 point is or why it's so important, watch that episode.
Yeah.
When that happens, that's when magic can start to happen, because you're in a state where you're centered within the body, within yourself. When you're in the 0, you have much more ability to influence your reality, and you feel more stable and centered.
Right.
You're more here, present.
Yeah.
So when you're in that state, that's the specifics, the little tactic. How do you come into this?
Yeah.
And it's a practice for people. I mean, it's like all the time. You know, when you first begin, it's like constantly almost. As much as you can remember to do this, it's very important. And then, generally speaking, it has to do with surrender and how high your frequency resonance is. So meaning, noticing how much you need to control the outcome, how much you want the expectation you have to come into fruition, how badly you think you want something. All of these things are your mind indicating, or your emotions indicating, where you have distortion, where you're in resistance to what is. You're not aligned with flow because you freaking want something different.
Yeah, and I'm imagining it takes a lot of trust to do that, right?
Exactly.
To surrender and let go your idea how it should look.
Exactly.
Right. And I'm also, when you were talking there, it became really clear to me, a lot of people have this feeling that this universal life force is outside of them.
Yes.
But the more that you talked and gave the tips and described how you can be, in that state, to be in the flow, it sounds like it's already inside of you.
Exactly. And it's just recognizing and bringing your attention to the fact that it is within you, because it runs through you. It animates you. It is you. That is when you realize, oh, wait a minute. It's around me. It's within me. It's through me. I can't really be separate from it. I think I'm separate from it.
Yeah.
I believe I am. And I cut myself off from it because I think, okay, I just got to plug away and churn away at doing whatever I need to get done. But when we start to, as you say, soften and become aware of it within ourselves by being present in the body, centered in time, you're like, oh, okay. all right, I can feel that life force, not just mine, but like this other thing that buoys me.
Yeah, and I think taking it to a grander scale a little bit there, that's when you hear people talking about the collective. And so I think at that time, you're looking for solutions for yourself. And you've maybe learned that, again, you need to let go of the mind's idea of what the solution is. Just come in, centered, the orientation, and trusting and surrendering that the answer is going to come.
Yeah.
You know, because you know it is and it's there. But it's also, I wonder, at the same time, you're getting your answer for you, but are you also at the same time getting this collective voice or field that this is the right answer, not just for you, but it's also for whoever else you're impacting in your field.
Exactly.
I mean, can that happen as
that
well?
can happen once you get to a high enough frequency resonance.
Right.
Right. So I just want to distinguish. A lot of people will say, a voice appeared in my head. If it's a voice and it's talking to you, that's not what you're talking about.
No.
You're talking about a universal life force and an awareness of the frequency of the collective and the highest level good. That is like a feeling or knowing. Okay, you just know. You don't know how you know. You just know, or you feel it. But there are no actual words. It's not like someone says to you, Fiona, do the following 3 things in the next order. It's not like this.
Yeah.
If that is happening, that's of a lower order because it's much more mental. And when you have that kind of thing, then what you can have sometimes is things like entities or the dead or things that are darker.
Yeah.
Not always, but much of the time.
Yeah, well,
So-
it certainly will be higher resonating, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, because things of a very high resonance aren't talking. It's a communication that's of a higher level order. And so therefore, it's like a transmission of knowingness, frequencies, whatever you want to call it, but it's like a knowing feeling. And it's complete, meaning it's like undeniable in a way.
Yeah.
You just know.
There's an image, I was trying to explain it to my sons, or my sons were trying to explain it to me, and we both agreed that this word captured it for us. You kind of see it in the movies, but it's like plasma. You know when you push into plasma and it pushes, but it's soft and it's malleable and you can meld with it and you can meld, you can come away with it. It can be around you. You can be part of it. So we were saying that for us, it's kind of like plasma. There's no words, there's nobody with a voice.
Yeah.
You just feel this softness and then this push against you or, pull and you're like, oh, that's the way I'm supposed to go. Oh, no, that's not the way I'm supposed to go.
Yeah, exactly. And for feeling people, that's totally true. And for some of you, you'll just know it. There won't be a feeling. And some of you are like, I don't feel a damn thing. That's okay.
Yeah.
But you just know. You're like, I don't know how I know this. It seems totally ridiculous, but I just know.
Yeah, and just that impetus not to even question it
Exactly.
is like, okay, this is for sure
Yes.
what I'm supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
Because there is absolutely zero questions or challenge to it.
Yeah.
Gotta do it.
Exactly. And sometimes what will happen is after you receive that knowingness, your mind will kick in and be like, well, that doesn't make sense. I mean, that seems ridiculous. This is the reasons. These are for the following reasons. None of that makes sense. So you have to be aware that that's your mind.
It's like the BBC. Let me just tell you now, that.
So in any case, the thing to know is that you're to be able to distinguish between the mind chatter and your knowing.
Yeah.
And that comes, I know for some people you're like, how do you know that when it's a voice inside your head, or how do you know if it's your own thoughts? When you start to raise your frequency resonance, when you start to rise in terms of your vibrational level, you start to have a space from your own thoughts, your own emotions. So you're very aware of when it's your thoughts. It's okay that they're your thoughts, but you're aware that they're your thoughts. So it's like, okay, well, that's just my thought. It's not necessarily what's true. It's just a thought. So I know for some people who are watching this, that might sound frustrating because you're like, I don't know how to distinguish. You don't know how to distinguish yet. And that's okay. The more you do frequency work, the more and more clear it'll become. And like I said, for some of you who are feelers or seers, that's going to be like how you interface with it. You know what I mean? That feeling sense.
Yeah.
And for some of you, you will not be able to explain it. And it will be hard for you to distinguish at first the difference between a knowing and a thought. But there's part of you that knows the difference because it's like you'll have, for some people, they get a body response, like they get goosebumps, or they like feel their breath change, or there's something in their stomach that's just like, yep, that's right. Like I can feel it in my, I'm like, yep, that's right. It's like you know it in your body, for example.
Yeah.
So that is like another way that you could tell for people who don't, for example, feel.
Yeah, my husband would be one of them too. Like, he will feel, but then his way of describing it is he just knows.
Yeah.
And because normally he'll have these doubts. He'll go asking people, what do you think? Should I? Do you think this is? But when he knows, he knows.
Yeah.
And he doesn't care what anybody else thinks.
Exactly.
He just knows.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's funny. My husband is just very similar. And I never doubt that knowing of Chris, my husband, as he's like, I just feel we have to do this. Immediately I'm following. Because I never doubt his knowing.
Yeah.
You know, just like he doesn't doubt mine.
Yeah.
And so it's a really wonderful thing when you are in partnership, because when you have somebody, it doesn't have to be a partnership. It could be a friend, it could be someone close to you, it could
Whatever
be a
the
family member.
mastermind is at that time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when when you have a highly resonating mastermind, which is really lovely, and someone has a knowing, the mastermind starts to move to follow that knowing. And it's really, I think, spectacular.
Oh, yeah. And that's when the real magic happens.
Yeah.
Right? And I guess that's going to take me to the next part. So we're talking about this universal life force. And I think we're also talking at the same time, we've talked about the how to recognize it. And I think that at the same time, it would really, just to hit home, why is it so important?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important because it's a fundamental recognition that you are part of the one. That it is part of you. You are part of it. You can't be separated from it. And it's to transcend that veil of forgetting that we are separate, that we are finite, that we are limited. You are, in fact, stepping into that limitlessness because you are limitless. You just don't think you are. Most of us don't anyway, when we're running around being in our humanness. And so to recognize that aspect of us that recognizes that, and that you have a resource that's infinite, and that is you, and that you is part of the one. You can't separate them. And when you start to feel that, you're like, wow, there's so much more potential here that I didn't even realize was there. So when that starts to happen, you can start to embody like all these things we talk about, like limitlessness, abundance that's infinite. The way you feel that, the way you start to experience that is by starting to recognize and be in flow or being in alignment with universal life force.
Yeah. I think too that the message is really clear here that everybody has access,
Absolutely.
or is it, or whatever phrase we need to use. Everybody has access, equal access. It's just how much focus you have to be in it, right?
Yes.
And ultimately in the end, right?
Yes.
Do you want to commit to being in that zone
Yeah.
as much as possible?
Yeah.
Or, do you want to choose the other option, which sounds really hard? But
Yeah, exactly. And what I would just make a slight distinction. It's everyone has equal opportunity to access it.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of us have distortion that keep us from accessing it. Now, it's whether or not you feel clear enough or you have released enough of your distortion to access it. But we all equally have the opportunity to.
Yeah.
It's not like someone's better than and therefore they
No,
can't.
exactly.
Someone's more elevated and therefore they can't. We all have that possibility. Now, whether we choose to access it, that's of our own free will.
I was trying to say that, but you did it far more eloquently.
I think so. Just a distinction for people. Yeah.
Oh, that's really awesome. Okay, so the message for me is, do you want to choose the hard way or the easy way?
Yeah, and it's sort of like the more flowy, fluid, magical way. And it's not like ease is a funny thing, We think sometimes with ease as humans that there's no challenge. But it's not that there's no challenge. It's that somehow on some level you feel like you're supported by something as you move through that challenge. There's a knowingness that you're learning something and that it's not it's not like empty.
It's not inactive, right?
Exactly.
I was just going to say that too. It's not like once you're in flow, everything happens for you.
No.
It's just that you know where the direction is or where the tug is or where the pull is, and then you have to act whatever's required to act. It's not that you sit back and go, okay,
Feed
I'm
me
on holiday
grapes.
now. Yeah. I don't think you're saying that.
No, I'm saying that flowiness is a constant opportunity for us to access more of it. And to access more of it sometimes requires challenge for us, sometimes requires for us to look at ourselves more closely, to release things that no longer serve us, to release beliefs that limit us. There's a whole number of things that keep us from being in that flow. So even though you enter a certain level of ease, there's always more, And sometimes to enter that ease, we have to release what keeps us from being in it.
Thank you for breaking that down, actually, and providing the tips. That's really useful. So appreciate that.
Thank you. And for those of you who want to enter more of that universal life flow, I'd recommend that you listen to the GFC associated with this episode, because that is where the change occurs. And if you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button and subscribe. We're about to start the group frequency calibration, or GFC, where we actually do the frequency work and where change is catalyzed. To get to the GFC, click on the square that'll appear to the right or the link in the description below. It's time to bring in a new experience, a new consciousness, and a new world. Let's rise together.